How's it going, everyone? So I wanted to do another React challenge thing. I don't know if this would actually be asked for an interview, but I still think it's a good like beginner slash intermediate thing to like challenge yourself with. So definitely try building this yourself, and I'm sure you guys have all seen this game before. Challenge is basically building out a memory game. Like, you know how you have like a 4x4 grid or a 5x5 grid, and there's tiles on that grid, and you basically have to select two tiles that are the same. That's kind of the challenge. And why that's a good challenge is I think it kind of hits a lot of good quizable material in React and just programming in general. I have a Vite app set up already. I'm just going to go ahead and delete a majority of the boilerplate code. And let's go over and look at the app and make sure this actually works. I'm typing hello. There we go. And then also make sure you always have your dev tools open because it's important when you're developing. So a memory game, just in case you don't know what a memory game is, let me just show you real quick. So it's like one of these where you have like little cards and you flip them over. We're going to keep this as simple as possible, and we don't need to worry about trying to auto-generate a random board every time. I think it's good if you just start with something hard-coded and like work your way from that. So again, the challenge is how do you actually build a memory game where a user can like click on cards and then maybe reset it or something. And that would be kind of my interview question. One thing I noticed about these challenges is that some people get really upset when I say that these are like interview questions, and honestly, that's just like my way of making clickbait titles. But I still think it's good to like make sure you know how to build this stuff. So whenever you're dealing with a grid in React or JavaScript or whatever, usually that means you need like a 2D array, right? So do you know what a 2D array is? Hopefully you do. If not, it's basically an array that for every element in that array, you have more arrays, right? So this is the first dimension, and this is the second dimension, or inside of this. And typically, the 2D array is used for like the rows and the columns of a grid. So if I go ahead and just make some React state, just say grid and set grid, I'm going to go ahead and say useState, pull in that state hook. And with the state hook, what I could potentially do is I'm going to go ahead and just make a board. And again, like it's okay to hard code this stuff. Like try to solve each problem individually and then come back and solve maybe a harder problem, such as how do you randomly generate a board of things. So let's start with something really basic. I'm going to do a 3x3. So I'm going to do an array that has 3 rows, right? Does that make sense? We have an array with 3 rows, and then each row is going to have how many columns? It's going to have 3. So I'm going to go ahead and just do like all zeros for right now. And I think for this to work, it might have to be even. So 1, 2, 3. This is 9, right? But if you were to divide 9 by 2, I don't think that's going to work. So I do think the grid has to be like some type of even. And to keep this as basic as possible, like we could just, that seems like a pretty good grid, right? So again, like I would basically set all of these, like I would go through here and just hard code a grid that would make sense. So like make these 1s, these could be 2s. We could do a 3 here. And these will kind of represent like the things that are underneath the card as you flip them. And the idea is like you have to have pairs to like fully do this. So let's just go ahead and do that. All right, so we got a grid. We have like unique pairs inside the grid, and let's double check 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This all looks good. So the first step again is like, how do you codify a 2D grid? Well, this is how you can do it. Second step is how do you render that out to a page? Well, in React, you can use a map function, and that's how you can loop over state. That happens to be an array. So I'm going to do a map. I'll say grid.map. And we're going to basically do the row. And for each row, we are going to make a div like this. And I'm just going to go ahead and put like a class name of this as row, I guess. And then just to make sure we save this so it like formats correctly. What am I missing here? We should probably get a row index as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pull in a row index, and I'll say key of row index. Like this, and I have tons of errors everywhere. Let's try to figure out what is going on here. So one thing I would probably recommend is if you ever get into a situation like this where like you can't figure out what's going on, literally just start over. Like just start over, and I'm going to say row index. Okay, it's usually easier just like start fresh and just rewrite it. Okay, and then I'm going to return that div that had a class name of row like this. and make sure I have that closing tag. Okay, there, I fixed my issue. I probably had a simple syntax error, but sometimes it's easier to just like wipe it clean and start over. Now with React, you want to make sure you have your keys set on the parent element of what you're mapping over. It's super important, or else your page can like re-render improperly. In this example, I'm going to use the index. Usually using the index is bad practice, but we don't have a unique identifier for every row column combination, so I'm going to use the index in this case. Now remember, row is going to be an array of numbers, right? So we're going to have to actually map over this again. And if you wanted to do an implicit return like this, you could do that. That might make the code a little bit cleaner. And inside that div, that for every row, we are going to map over every column. So I'm going to say row.map, and then I'll say number, and then probably keep track of the number of the column index like this. And then we are going to go ahead and just return another div, this. And guessing I'm missing a parenthesis. Make sure you save, your auto format works. And now what we need to do is just print out the number. Okay, so then of course I'm going to put the key as column index here. Now, we've done a lot of code. Let's make sure this code works. I'm going to go over to my UI and make sure that we can actually see some things pop out. And if we hover over the DOM, we have a row here that has 0, 3, 5, 1, which seems pretty good. 0, 3, 5, 1. And what we want to do is probably style this, because right now it's like the styling's not good. I'm going to go ahead and if we go back here, we got app, and app is going to render out this. So I would probably wrap this thing in a div. I'll say div, last name is a grid. And I'm going to use CSS grid because that's like one of my favorite ways to like make a 3x3 or a 4x3 grid. You could also use Flexbox if you're really familiar with that, and maybe Flexbox will work better. But let's just try it out. The issue with CSS grid is that like the grid templates will change depending on the size of your grid. So like you might have to do an inline style with the grid template columns. So maybe using Flexbox might be easier. Anyway, let's just try stuff out. So I'm going to say display a flex on the grid, and I'm going to say flex direction is column. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the row as well. Now row, I'm going to say display a flex, and I'm going to say, just save it and see what happens. Because now we have a grid, and then we have a row, and then this one will be a column, right? So let's see if that looks good. Oh, that looks pretty good. Now we should probably have like cards. Okay, so it's good to be able to flex your CSS knowledge and say like, oh, I can build like a little card. It doesn't have to be like awesome, but I'm going to give a card class to this div, and I'm going to see if we can build this out. So let's go back to here, and I'm going to make a selector of .card, and that'll style that card class. And I'm going to go ahead and give it like a padding of, we could do like 20 pixels, and then we could do background of white. And we probably want to add some spacing in between all these elements. So there is something with Flexbox, you can do a gap, and I could do like 10 pixels, and that'll put spacing between my rows. And then same thing here, I'll say for every row, I want a gap of 10 pixels, and that'll put spacing in between my columns, right? So it looks pretty good. Okay, so again, like don't spend too much time on the styling. Like we want the functionality, but if you can get it to look decent enough that you can actually play it, then it's good. If this were some type of like interview challenge. And right off the bat, like this shows that you know how to do CSS, some layout, you know how to do like Flexbox, some type of gap. Those are all good things to kind of explain that you know when it comes to front-end engineering, right? Front-end development. Okay, so this is kind of confusing, but you'll get used to it if you ever do 2D stuff, 2D grid stuff. So now what we could potentially do is we could make it so when you click on one of these cards, we're going to guess that number. So let's take a step back and think a little bit, like what do we need to do? I think it's good to handle the click. So when you click on a card, one of these cards here, we want to reveal what number we clicked. And then when you click again, we want to reveal the other card. And then after some amount of time, we want to like hide them both. Unless you get them both correct, unless they both match, then we want to hide them all and then kind of go back. So this one might be a little bit, you know, you have to work with it, try to figure out a good solution if you can't think of it off the top of your head. But let's just go ahead and try doing that. I'm going to add an on-click listener to this card component or card div. I'm going to say on-click. I'm going to say handle card clicked, and we're going to go ahead and put this as an anonymous function, and we want to know what index they click. So I'm going to say row index, column index. Okay, so we're going to make this function appear. I'll say function handle card clicked, and we want to take in a row index and a column index. Now again, I'm using TypeScript. If you're not familiar with TypeScript, really it's just a matter of typing your arguments on functions, and like it'll just help you out if you pass the wrong thing in here. Like if I were to pass in a string, notice that it yells at me saying that I'm doing it wrong. So don't feel overwhelmed if you don't really understand TypeScript that much. So now when we click on a card, like let's think about what we need to do. We need to reveal the clicked card. And then if two cards, I should say if one card has already been revealed, show the next one, hide them. Actually, let me think about this. If one card has already been clicked prior, then I need to like, if they both match, mark them as answered or something. If they don't match, hide them after 1 second. So I personally, okay, when I say this, it kind of formats it, but I personally like doing this type of pseudocode because it kind of helps you like understand what's going on before you actually start coding. And you want to like kind of like list out the business requirements and logic in like in a sentence in like an English language so that you can kind of digest it and break it down easier to solve the problem. But let's just focus on the first one. Can we implement something that reveals which card that we've clicked? And off the top of my head, the way I think I would do this is I would have another grid, keep track of which ones have been revealed or not. All right, there's a bunch of different ways we could do this. We could actually have this grid store objects, and those objects could have like booleans that says like is revealed true or false. But sometimes I think just like having a separate grid, if that makes more sense in your head, because in most cases, like you don't need to worry about performance. So I'm going to say is revealed and set is revealed. Okay. Actually, I might call this reveal grid and set is reveal grid like this. And then this is all going to be false by default. And then what we could actually do is we can make this match the same dimensions as grid if we wanted to. So what I could actually do is say new array grid.length. And then I'm going to go ahead and fill this with empty stuff. And then I'm going to map over it. And then for everything that we map over, I'm going to say new array grid of 0.length. Okay, so we'll make a new, let me make sure I have enough parentheses here. I'll make a new array that's going to be, in this case, 3 rows. And then for every row, I'm going to fill it with a new array that has 4 columns. And then I need to fill this again with false. So at this point, I would definitely console log this because you're probably going to script this logic. Console log it, go to your console, and make sure that you have an array of a bunch of falses. And we do. So this looks good. We did array. And then every time you set these to true, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reveal one of these cards. So how do we do that? Well, before we even worry about this, let's try to get this working without even worrying about the click listener. Okay, so what I'm going to do is if you have the revealed location as true, then we're going to show the number. Otherwise, we're going to show nothing. So how do you do that? Well, inside here, instead of just showing the number, which I think they're hidden right now. This, I should probably set that real quick. Just give me 2 seconds. I'm going to give this a color of black so we can actually like see them. But these are revealed by default, and we don't want that, right? We want to hide them and then only reveal them if reveal is true. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, we're going to go over here. I'm going to say revealed grid, and we'll say row index, and then we'll say column index. If this is true, then we're going to go ahead and just print out the number. I don't know why I'm putting curly braces there. And then if it's false, we are going to just display nothing. Okay, does that kind of make sense to you all? So this is going to look at that grid and then only show the number if it's true. Now, like I said, you don't have to worry about even handling the click listener, because if you understand how to use your React Dev Tools, you can go into this. I can go into my thing here and I can change this true, and notice that the number prints out. Okay. Now I might actually put a space here because I think it's like not rendering anything by default. But notice how I can go here and I can change this to true, and now stuff gets revealed. So now it's like, okay, well, we know how to show stuff based on state. Now all we need to do is just set these to true when people click. That should be pretty easy. So let's go over to handle click card, and I'm going to go ahead and say set is revealed grid. Actually, I might actually rename this as set revealed grid. And we want to basically update the current reveal grid to be either true or false. Now there's different ways you can do this. I'm just going to make a new revealed grid. That's going to be a shallow copy of the original grid. And then I'm just going to go ahead and say row index, all index is equal to true. And then we're going to go ahead and just set it like this. So let's test if this works. I think it should. Now as I click on these things, they get revealed. Now I will say the CSS is a little bit problematic because like these things grow as you put text in there. So I'd rather go back to the card and give it like a width of 100 pixel and a height of 150 pixels. Something that's like more card dimensions. Okay, that's way too much. 250 and 75. Okay, that looks a little bit better. And then we could center this number if you wanted to. Like you can kind of flex your flexbox knowledge. I could say like display flex, and I could say justify content center, align items center. And now that number should be centered. And then probably also like we should have the cursor be a pointer when we hover over these things. Okay. And then even like show that you know how to do like a hover state. I could say, well, I want to make it so when someone hovers over this card, it's going to be a little bit of a gray. So I'll do like F0, F1, F1, or E9, E9, E9. Okay, so let's focus on, let's take a step back. We got the stuff to reveal based on state. And as we click on these cards, we're updating state using that click listener. But how do we, after you click on the wrong things, how do you hide them all after a second? Actually, don't even worry about the second thing. I think we're getting too ahead of ourselves. All right, so we know how to reveal the cards. I think we did that pretty well. Let's just go ahead and delete that. So now we need to kind of keep track of like which ones did we just clicked. Like we know the one we just clicked is this one, but what was the previous one? Okay, so we could just go ahead and say like const previous click and set previous click maybe. Use state, and you could also use a ref here if you wanted to as well, because I don't think we're going to display the previous clicked. If you're the type of person who likes to do premature optimization, then go ahead and just, you can do that. But I'm going to go ahead and just say set the previous clicked to, we need to get the actual number that we clicked, which we could basically say, yeah, so let's just go ahead and keep track of the number. There's like different ways we could do this. I'm going to go ahead and say like clicked number is equal to grid, row index, call index, right? So that'll get the actual number we just clicked previously, and we're going to keep track of that. And then before we actually store that, this TypeScript is complaining because this needs to be a number or undefined, I believe. Let me just put that there. So if we haven't already clicked one, okay, so let's look at our pseudocode real quick because I think I'm getting ahead of myself. If one card has already been clicked prior, so if we already have a previous clicked, then we want to do something. Otherwise, we probably just want to do something else. And then you can put like little comments here, like this is the first click of the 2 clicks, and this is the second click of the 2 clicks, if that makes sense. And then let's see if we can kind of move this logic in here. If they both match, mark them as answered. So let's move this here. Okay, so let's figure this out. If you've clicked on a card previously and the one you just clicked matches, so I'm going to say if previous click matches the click number, then we want to do something. Otherwise, we don't want to do anything. Okay. So now if they both match, mark them as answered. Okay, so basically we don't have to do anything because we've already revealed it. There's no reason to hide it anymore, right? So I actually don't think we actually need to do anything here. I think we just say do nothing. But what I'm going to do is, like, since we're doing a no op, I would just reverse this. If they don't match, then that's when we're going to do some logic here. And I'm going to go ahead and just like try to figure this out. After 1 second, we need to hide them both. So in this case, we don't know how to do that. So I'm gonna do a set timeout. And then about after a second, we're gonna just go ahead and change some state. I'm gonna say, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this set reveal grid and I'm not gonna do it right here. I'm gonna do it somewhere else. And what we're gonna do is if the previous click is not equal to the one that you just clicked, we need to hide them both at some point. So how do you hide them both? Well, I could set this back to true after a second. And then we're gonna have to set the revealed thing to like update, so state will re-render. This might have some issues, so we'll have to figure this out. But if you clicked on the first click, then like we don't have to worry about that. Let's just go ahead and this. We're gonna go ahead and just do that. So show the one you just clicked if it was the first click of the twos. But if it was the second click of the twos, then you probably also want to do the same thing. All right, so this was kind of, this challenge is actually kind of challenging for me. So maybe I should have stopped and like did some of this on paper, but I'm actually gonna move this stuff up. I think this is gonna happen every single time. So like we don't have to worry about it. Like we're gonna reveal the one you clicked, and we always do that, right? But if for whatever reason you clicked on the wrong one, then we need to hide them. So I think we might need to spread this, but let's just go ahead and see what happens. All right, we added some code. Let's just test this out. I don't know what's going to happen. If I click two of the same numbers, like what actually happens? So if I do 1 and 1, those stay around. But if I do 1 and something else after a second, what happens? Absolutely nothing. Okay, but I think we want to make sure that we're getting here. So I'm going to put a debugger. Using a debugger is always good to like figure out your code. I'm going to go ahead and do 1 and 5. These do not match. So we think that the debugger should fire, but it's actually not firing. Okay, so I need to go and figure out why is this set timeout not firing. It's probably because we're not setting the previous click. So if we had a previous click do something, we probably want to go ahead and just clear set previous click down here. I'll say that false. Or just set it to undefined or something. And then else, we're going to go ahead and just set it to a click number. Okay, so let's see. Does this help us? I'm going to refresh the page. I'll click this. I'll click this after a second. Okay, we got into the debug statement. And I hope you guys like watching me do these live challenges, right? I literally just had an idea and I'm like, let's just record this, and I'm trying to code it live. So I think there's a lot of backseat coders who watch these YouTube videos and are like, oh, well, why didn't you think of this and that and the other? Well, it's actually kind of hard to talk and explain what you're doing and solve the problem at the same time. So if you find a solution while you're watching this, like I'm glad you guys found it and you guys can see like a better way to do it, and leave a comment if you find a better way. But we got here, let's just go ahead and click play and see what happens. So it's not actually hiding it. I would expect at least one of those things to hide, right? And I think the issue is because with the way React State works, it's not going to hide it unless you pass in a new reference. Okay, so let's try it again. Go ahead and refresh the page. I'll do 1 and 5, and after a second, run it. The 5 disappears. So I think we're on the right track. But the issue is we also need to hide the first click. But we didn't store the row and the column of the first click, right? We actually just store a number. So I think we got to refactor our code a little bit. We need to rethink what we're doing. And instead of storing a number here, I'm going to go ahead and store a point. So I'm going to go ahead and make a type called tcell. And that's going to have a row, which is a number, and it's going to have a column, which is also a number. And we're going to have this one store a tcell or undefined. So we can get more like resolution as to like where exactly was the previous click. Because right now we don't know. In fact, yeah, that should be good. So we have to just fix some code now, and luckily we're using TypeScript. So I could just go ahead and set the row as row index here. And then the column could be call index. Like so. And if the previous clicked row, all right, so this one has issues because I'm going to actually make another variable called previous click number, and that's going to be the grid of previous click row and previous click column. Are you guys super confused watching this? Because I'm starting to confuse myself. But why is this? Okay, so it's saying it's potentially undefined. So I need to do that inside of this if statement, right? Only do this check if we have it. I'm gonna go ahead and check if the previous click number is not equal to the current click number. Then we do this logic. And then we wanted to hide the first click. So how do you do that? I'm gonna go ahead and copy this, and I'm gonna say previous click dot row and previous click dot column. I don't know. Hopefully this works good. Let's try it again. I'm gonna click 1, 5. They both hide. 1, 2, or 3, whatever they both hide. 1 and 1. They stick around. Okay, so I think we're really close to solving this. Now I don't remember where all the things were. Okay, this one was good. This one is good. Awesome. So now there's like more edge cases that you could try to solve if you wanted to. Obviously, when you reveal all the locations, you should probably just show an alert saying you won, good job. And that's really as far as you need to take it. So like after you've clicked and you've revealed, I think this one, you could do it in here. You could say like, check if everything has been revealed, then show an alert. You could do it there. You could do it down here. I don't think it really matters. I think here would probably be a better check. Actually, let's think a little bit. Would it be better to do it here, or would it be better to do it? It might be better to do it here. If they both match, then we need to show something, or we need to check if we won. So I'm going to go ahead and just check const has won. And we want to make sure that every single cell, every single element of this 2D array of the reveal grid is true. And if it is, then I think we won, right? So I think there's something called flat map. There's also flat. Let's see, returns a new array with subcell arrays. I think we could use something like flat. And I'm going to go ahead and just console log that real quick, because I haven't used flat in a while and like real coding. And I'm going to go ahead and just print that out. I want to test to make sure that if we use this, does something actually happen? Okay, so it does flatten the array. I believe it does like a shallow flatten. And that's some of the best ways to like figure out like, okay, let me refresh my memory on how some of this stuff works. Just use it, console log it, and see if it's good. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten that. And I'm going to say if every element is true, in this case, instead of element, I'm going to go ahead and say like is revealed. So if everything is revealed, then I'm going to go ahead and say if has won. And then I think I could do like alert you won. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and shrink the grid a little bit just so this is a faster feedback loop. Because right now there's like a lot of stuff going on, and I just want to verify if I do 0, 0, 1, 1, we won. Okay. A little bug where it didn't actually show the card and it printed the alert first. You could probably do like a set timeout here or something. And I think you just want like this to happen later on in the event loop. So I think you just need to do it by like some amount. Let me just try this real quick. Yeah, just do some type of a timeout so it pushes it after the event loop in React. There might be different ways to do this. Someone else can kind of leave a comment. So there's also edge cases. Like right now, like you can click the same card multiple times, which is probably not what you want. Okay, so we probably want to make sure you can't click the card if you've already clicked it. So how do you do that? Well, I'm going to say if, I think right here, I can just say the if reveal grid, row index, call index. If it's already revealed, then like don't do anything. Let's just return here. That's like an edge case we should probably account for so that you can't like keep clicking the same thing. And then also we should probably change the hover to like not have a cursor or not change it. So you can do that dynamically with CSS if you wanted to. On the card itself, like we could add another class, this called like revealed, if it's already been answered. So it's good to kind of show that you know how to do dynamic classes. But at this point, if you can build this UI or build this little app, like you're good to go. I think it's called the reveal grid. I don't remember. Is that what we called it? Yeah. So if it's been revealed, then I'm going to go ahead and put revealed. Otherwise, we'll do nothing. And then I'm going to go ahead and just do some really hacky string concatenation because I want to wrap up this video pretty quick. And I'm going to go ahead and say if card.revealed, then cursor is default. And I'm going to go ahead and say like, I think it's called pointer events disabled. I don't know if that's actually the right one. Okay, I totally just broke something. So let's go back and figure out what did I break. So class name of card plus the reveal grid. If it's true, we're going to put revealed. Otherwise, we're going to put nothing. Yeah, I don't know what I broke here. Let's just go ahead and look at this real quick. We got the grid, we got the rows, we have reveal, but there's no card. So why did the class name disappear? That's kind of interesting. Do I need some parentheses? I'm probably adding a string to like a boolean. So like, let's put some parentheses here. Yeah, that was the issue. Sometimes JavaScript is just not good. All right, but anyway, I can't click it again. Okay, look at that. I can't click it. The background's still changing, but I mean, it's fine. So I click this one, and then after a second, they go away. Click that one, this one. There you go. So, I mean, this video is about 35 minutes long now. And it depends on how long your interviews are, but honestly, like if you got it this far, I think it's good enough. Like there's really no need to like tell them like, well, how would you randomly generate a board? All right. I mean, if you wanted to, you can ask them that, and that could be another problem that you could try to figure out. And then you could like make it even further of like, oh, how would you dynamically cause this to expand in grids if the user wanted to? But at this point, I think this challenge was good enough for like an intermediate. This logic is actually pretty complicated, and it actually kind of stumped me a little bit. So I think this is like an intermediate problem, maybe even more on the advanced level. I don't really know. It doesn't really matter. The point is like, make sure you practice learning how to problem solve these little things, because they really flex your brain and they really flex your problem solving capabilities, especially when it comes to React and JavaScript. But feel free to keep on adding on to this, right? You could find out more edge cases. You could add another UI here that allows you to select different grid sizes. You could have it, like there's probably an issue if I do this. Let me show you. If I do click this card and I can keep on clicking, that's probably not what we want, right? We don't want that. So we'd probably have to like stop the board and pause it until you fully, you know, that 1 second timer finishes. And again, these could be edge cases that you're thinking about and you kind of explain. But again, like an interview shouldn't take that long, and you shouldn't be building out too big of an application for an interview. If it takes you more than like an hour, then I think that's probably a problem. Like the interviewer gave you a question that was probably way too big in scope. But I think this was a good challenge. And if you guys like watching this, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe, press the bell icon. And like always, feel free to join my Discord if you want to talk to me directly or get help when you're trying to learn how to code with React or JavaScript yourself. And also, yeah, let me know of any other cool challenges you think would be good for like, quote unquote, an interview. I just been kind of making these things up off the top of my head, and I don't know if people would actually be asked these in an interview, but honestly, I think some of these are fair game, just because it kind of flexes your knowledge and kind of challenges the people who are being asked these questions. Anyway, have a good day. Happy coding.